G'day ladies and gentlemen, Scotty D here from the Australis Tabletop Wargaming Network, and welcome into our next installment in our How to Play Warhammer 40,000 10th Edition series. Alrighty ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the network for the next installment in our How to Play Warhammer 40,000 10th Edition series that we've been working on for the past year or so on the network for 10th Edition. We've been continuing to look at the different ways you can play the game, as well as the core rules, how you go about army lists, as well as now the important documents that you need to keep an eye on, and additional documents that you need to keep an eye on for the game as well. And for today's installment, we're going to be continuing our look at important documents and the ones to stay up to date with for Warhammer 40,000 10th Edition, which we're going to be looking at some of the additional documents, not necessarily the more important ones, but the additional ones such as Imperial Armour, Legends, Combat Patrol, and kind of explain what these are, so you know fully what they have to do with and what they're important for when you are playing your games for Warhammer 40,000. Now, before we jump into the content of today's video, I want to thank everyone who has been watching our content as of late. Really appreciate you guys watching our videos, dropping the likes, leaving comments as well. Really do appreciate it, as well as subscribing to the channel and make sure you're notified for when we are dropping videos as well. So to jump into the content for today's video, each of these types of documents that we're going to be looking at are going to be focused on additional units or additional ways that you can play the game for 10th edition, which is something to bear in mind, particularly if you're wanting to play, more narratively focused style games, if you want to include some additional spicy units that you may have picked up secondhand. If you're new to the hobby, or if you're existing, you might still have these guys in your collection as well. Now, for each of these documents, these will have a different update cycle throughout the edition as well that we'll be covering during each kind of document section. Now, once again, each of these documents that we will be looking at in today's video can be found on the Warhammer community website under the Warhammer 40,000 downloads section, and they are probably below the indexes, erratas, and FAQs is where we're going to be starting off for today. Where the first section we're going to be looking at is the Imperial Armour supplements. Now, for a bit of context around Imperial Armour, what Imperial Armour refers to is that Forge World, which is a separate arm of Games Workshop, which do Forge World resin kits, they actually in previous editions used to create these Imperial Armour books where they would go into a certain campaign or a certain world and focus on a few specific factions, giving them a really in-depth lore, a lot of artwork, a lot of units that you could use with that army, a different way to play that army as well, with different Forge World army lists and such as well, with a lot of unique models in there too, which is absolutely phenomenal. And so what these are for Warhammer 40,000 10th Edition is these documents actually contain the Forge World unit rules for use in 10th Edition for each faction, and it does also include a separate points document that they are contained in as well for when you are wanting to include them in your army list. Now, these units will add a lot of flavor to the various armies across the game, as there is a lot of factions that actually did get a lot of Imperial Armor love throughout the previous editions, and there's some great miniature sculpts. However, over time, we are now starting to see a trend in Warhammer 40,000 where a lot of the Imperial Armor models from Forge World are actually either being moved out of production and no longer being produced, also being known as an OOP miniatures or OOP kit, out of production kit. But at the same time, they still do allow you to play with them because you've got the models and you've got the rules there that you can play with them as well. However, the trend is that as new codexes are coming out for the new edition and as more updates come in, there are a lot of these units that are sitting in these Imperial Armor indexes that are moving into Legends. And so it means that instead of having those units to use going forward and being able to play them up to date with the current edition of the game in a competitive setting, for example, at an escalation league, if they're not allowing Legends, or at a tournament, it means that you are going to not be able to use them in those settings. So that is kind of the bit of the downside and a bit of an unfortunate trend, because a lot of these models are phenomenal sculpts, add a lot of value to the armies that they are being used for as well, which this does lead us into the next series of documents, which is going to be for Legends. Now, the Legends documents are full of miniatures, whether they're Games Workshop Prime models or whether they're Forge World miniatures. These models that are included in all of the Legends indexes have actually been removed from their relevant codexes or removed from their Imperial Armour indexes, and are also no longer produced miniatures. Now, the Legends documents are the way that Games Workshop is allowing you to continue to play with these units for players that own these miniatures still and still want to play with them in their games. So say, for example, if you got some Contemptor Dreadnoughts for Space Marines, they are now in Legends. So it means that you will not be able to use them in competitive events, but you can still use them in your pickup games and such, and more campaign narrative style settings if you wish to do so. Now, it's really unfortunate because the downside here is that they are only updated once per edition. They only receive the one update. And generally, if they've already been removed and moved into Legends in a previous edition, this update will happen at the start of an edition. However, if it is removed with a codex that is coming out for this edition, which we've just seen with Tau. They've got a lot of stuff that they did remove, such as Tetras, being a key unit that they have had removed from the Imperial Armour Index into Legends. It does mean that they do get an update when being moved into Legends, or they might just be kept the same, and then their points are moved across into the Legends points document for their faction as well. So there is a bit of some other downsides as well, because if you do enjoy playing, say, Warhammer Horus Heresy, for example, it does mean that you cannot use any of the Horus Heresy specific units in Warhammer 40,000 10th edition, unless you're playing the Tactical Marines as Tactical Marines, basically, or you're running a Contemptor Dreadnought that's got the exact same loadout as what you would expect, say, a Redemptor to do, or a Brutalis. Those kind of things you can maybe get similar, but again, better off being used in narrative style games, which I personally feel the pain of Legends units. I've had a lot of my Space Marine collection actually move into Legends, which means I'm not able to use them, or I'm having to find other ways of being able to utilize them on the table as well. Now, this system is not perfect with the Legends, and generally these units might be overcosted for what they actually do on the table for you, or they don't really function too well with the current way that the game is played or the current rule set for them as well. So that's another downside to it as well, which really does suck. And it does mean that your purchases, if you're an existing player, like I've been playing the game for almost 20 years now, having a lot of my collection slowly being invalidated has really been a little soul sucking, unfortunately. But unfortunately, that's just the way Games Workshop is doing things. And it's come up in comments in other videos and such previously as well that it's just Games Workshop's business model, and it's here to stay, unfortunately. But to get away from that little bit of negativity, we're going to jump into the next series of documents, which we've already spoken about right at the start of the series, which is Combat Patrol. Now, all of the documents here are used to play the Combat Patrol game mode. Now, you can find all the rules for Combat Patrol and every Combat Patrol's data cards to be able to play with them for Combat Patrol, rather than having to pick up their codex and being able to use them. You can find them for free on the Warhammer 40,000 download section, which is, I think, a really great way to get people into the game. I honestly think they should be doing this for the mainline game as well, but that's neither here nor there. At least we've got the core rules up in a PDF. That's a start at least, and then hopefully over time they will start to transition this into the main form of the game as well. As more codexes get released for 10th edition, they'll actually have a Combat Patrol update. So what impact this will actually have is actually next to none for Combat Patrol, because the thing that they are doing is that when they release a new codex with a new version of a Combat Patrol for that faction, they are actually leaving the existing Combat Patrol in place on the website, as well as then adding the new Combat Patrol's rules onto the website for your use as well, which I think is awesome. I really do think that that is a great way to do it for the format of the game that is introducing new players on how to play Warhammer 40,000 with the core rules and just the Combat Patrol rules, keeping things nice and simple. I think that's a really great initiative, and I think it should be shown in other places for the game at large as well. So it does mean that you can basically pick up any Combat Patrol, or even, if you want to play an older Combat Patrol, you just have to pick up those individual boxes, which, yes, it may cost a bit more than grabbing it as the Combat Patrol itself, but at the same time, you can still play with that that version of the combat patrol, you're building your army at the same time. Say, for example, orcs. We've just had a new update to the orc combat patrol. You can grab all the units that were in the old orc combat patrol, and you can still use them in combat patrol today, which is awesome to see. So that basically covers that, because the rules for combat patrol, just use the core rules, which are also free to download, and so everything you need to play combat patrol is basically free to download on the website, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, the last section of documents we're going to be talking about for this is just the additional rules section. That's basically what it covers, and what this section is, it's kind of a mishmash of different documents that don't fit into some of the other categories, which is really troubling because of one of the documents that is listed here. I really think it should be listed elsewhere. So the most notable ones of these are the 10th edition version of the Crusade rules, and how to migrate your Crusade armies from 9th edition into 10th edition. You've also got the boarding action game mode having rules down in this section as well, which was released towards the back end of 9th, and so now you've got the rules for boarding actions in 10th edition, which is great. Then you've got the Leviathan Tournament Companion, which I don't think should actually be situated here. I think it should be situated further up in terms of the quick reference, because basically everyone uses the companion for competitive play. I think it's really important, at least at the moment, because Prior Nexus is going on pre-order this weekend as well. And then there's a heap of narrative scenarios that you can grab to be able to play out with your buddies, whether that's, certain game modes with playing Captain Titus and, his small game mode, or, a whole heap of other scenarios that they've got up there now as well. And I'm sure there'll be more to come. Now, to basically walk through what each of these are, is that the Crusade documents are the free downloadable rules for Crusade from the core rulebook, very similar to, say, Combat Patrol, that are there as well, so you don't need to have grabbed the Leviathan rulebook from the Leviathan box set. If you don't want to, you can find the baseline Crusade rules here. It just means that if you want to play with the Leviathan Crusade rules, it just means you've got to pick up the Leviathan Crusade supplement and to utilize those rules. So that's something to bear in mind, as with the Leviathan Crusade rules being included in the Leviathan book with the standard Crusade rules as well. And then it's a really simple document on how to update your Crusade armies from 9th edition to 10th edition, which is really quite a simple transition, which is great. The boarding actions are specialized scenario rules that allow you to play iconic battles or boarding actions against enemy spacecraft or even beachheads on Space Hulks, which is really cool. And it's more centered around specialized troops rather than being like, you got your traditional HQ leader and a particular unit. It's more, you've just got a bunch of foot troop units that are going in to establish a beachhead or destroy an enemy beachhead, which is cool. Then you've got the Leviathan Tournament Companion, which really shouldn't belong here for a few reasons that we'll get into. It does have 15 suggested missions that you can play when using the Leviathan mission cards. For more of a competitive setting, they've got a restricted list of mission rules. They use all of the deployments as well as all of the mission cards. However, as we've discussed previously for the Leviathan missions, there's a lot that really don't work too well, as well as some adjustments to the primary and secondary mission cards, which is really important, I will say, because they actually really help balance those cards. And so that's why I think it should be in the quick reference section. Now, it also has got the 4GW layouts in there, as well as how you can go structuring events. I think if you are playing with Games Workshop layouts as well, I think it's important that that should be up at the top of the document too. And then that about covers it for each of the different styles of documents that we actually have down in the remaining sections of the Warhammer community website. These can be really crucial to the way that you play the game with a particular format, such as Crusade, or competitively with the Leviathan Tournament Companion, or Combat Patrol even, because I know there are some Combat Patrol events as well. But also, you're able to see when units are moved from Imperial Armour into Legends as well, see the points for Legends units. So make sure have a read through these documents and familiarize yourself with them, because you might find some fun stuff, but keep it in mind that they're going to be related to particular formats. In terms of units, they're going to be for Imperial Armor or Legends use only. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching today's video. Really appreciate you guys sticking through right through to the end, and I hope you did learn a bit about some of the different documents that you can have a look at on the 40k download section of the Warhammer community website, so you're familiar with what they are in a brief sense. And so, you know, you're not looking at them going, what the heck are all these? Where do I find these models? Why are these rules here and such as well? And just kind of knowing the differences as well. I just want to thank everyone who has been here joining us on YouTube as of late. Really do appreciate it as we continue to push for community monetization. We're not too far away, which is absolutely phenomenal. We're about 200 to 300 watch hours away, which is awesome, and I really do appreciate you guys liking the videos, commenting them as well. And feel free, if you haven't done so already, to do those, as well as subscribe to the channel, turn on that notification bell so you're able to be notified as to when we are releasing more content here on the network. And even if you're able to just throw one of the playlists up in the background, let it run through to help us with watch hours, that would be really greatly appreciated if at all possible. I also want to thank everyone who comes and joins us over on Twitch, and if you haven't already, feel free to head over to Twitch. Find us at the Australis TWN Twitch channel. Make sure you drop a follow over there, because we do live hobbying sessions, as well as tournament previews, tournament coverage and stuff, as well as a lot of stuff that we don't do here on the YouTube channel, particularly around the hobbying side of things, as we are still getting the From Sprue to Tabletop series built out at the moment as well. And I also want to give a massive shout out to our Twitch and Ko-Fi supporters. Thank you so much for financially contributing to the work we are doing here at the network. Without your financial contributions, we might not be able to do some of the work that we have been doing as of late, and it is really appreciated. So thank you to each and every one of you that is on screen right now as well. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll catch you in the next one.